Hi, my name is Phil and I'm bringing this old canoe stern motorboat back to life. Her name is Jabiru and she's 88 years old. This episode shows the next part of rebuilding the side decks. In order to have space to lay out the necessary parts, Roger and I put together a temporary bench. I was lucky enough to acquire these bench supports already made up. Later on, this bench will be handy for laying up and cutting fiberglass when sheathing the hull begins. However, that is still a way down the track. I laid up some 3mm plywood against the wedges at the shear line and marked them, and this gives me an expanded flat shape when I put it on the bench to be able to use as a pattern for scarfing the laminations for the carlins. The next step is to rough cut all the scarves on the circular saw. This is done by making that wedge and clamping each piece and then running it through the saw. The angle is approximately the same as the scarf will be on each one. So quite a few pieces to cut there, but very quick way of doing it. Now that the rough cuts are all done, I made up this jig so I could use it with the router. Just put a large plate underneath the router so that I can slide it up and down, and that finishes off the scarves quite accurately, and it's a fairly quick way of doing it as well. Each carlin is made up of 3 laminations, and there are 8 pieces to each of these 3 laminations, and there's 2 carlins, of course. This makes for very strong beams. Now that all the scarves have been cut, I take each piece, lay it on the bench and glue them together, clamp them, using that plywood guide to get the shape of the shear line approximately. As you might understand, all these scarves have been cut square to the end of the each piece of timber, so bending them around in a circle like this distorts the value of the scarf. So they're a little bit lumpy when they come out of this process, so I put them through the thicknesser just to smooth those bumps out. Just take a very small skim of material off, and it also gives me a clean surface to do the gluing together when the 3 laminations are put together on the boat. When doing this final lamination of the 3 pieces on each carlin, I had to use very slow hardener with the epoxy, as the wetting out process requires painting quite a large area, and it would have been embarrassing to have the glue go off halfway through the job. With Roger's help, however, it all went smoothly. If you are wondering, the use of those wedges should now be coming clear, as this will give us an exact shape we need for the carlin, in terms of the shape of the shear, the angle away from the vertical, and the plan view shape. When this comes off the boat, it'll maintain that exact same shape. I did explain earlier that the wedges set the angle that I want the cabin sides to lean inwards. So when the carlins are fitted to the side deck beams, the angle will automatically be correct along the length of the cabin sides, which will be fitted against the inside edge of those carlins.
So there we go. So that set of timber is sitting on blocks like that. So I've now got to do one for this side. Well, the port side, Carlin is now glued up and dry, and today I did the starboard side. So it's all still wet. But now I just need to fit those two and build the side decks.
Before I removed the laminated carlins from the shear line, I made a series of cutaways to replicate the angle of the camber before the carlins are made to finally fit, and this was roughly finished before the carlins were matched up to the deck beams. Well, I've taken the port side carlin off. I guess that's what you call it, carlin. It's the inner beam for the side deck. And if carlin's not the word, someone will correct me. So I've notched them at the correct camber in each every 300-400 millimeters or so, and I've cut the ends so they'll fit in between the deck beam at the forward end of the aft deck and the deck beam at the aft end of the forward deck. So now I'm going to cut that camber roughly, and then I'll be able to fit the deck beams. Well, you guessed it. From that noise you can gather it's raining again. It's really good to be inside this tent and be able to work in dry weather. The deck beams were then fitted and temporarily bolted to the beam shelf so the carlin could be laid over the top to mark out for fitting. Once the marking is done, the deck beams are removed so the joints could be cut, and then the beams were fitted, glued and bolted in place ready for the carlins. The cutouts were then made in the carlin and then it was ready to fit to the beams. I'm only showing a couple of the cutouts so you can imagine the rest without having to sit through it. The camera battery died just as we started to fit the port side carlin, so there's no video of that. This is how it all looks, glued up now, ready for final fastenings. The process of marking and fitting the side deck beams on the starboard side is just replicating what you've already seen do on the port side. What you're seeing now is the final fitting of the starboard carlin, which we didn't have any video for the port one, but this is just being put in place with glue and clamped, and once the glue's dried it'll be finally fastened with silicon bronze screws. And then I can go ahead with the process of putting the deck covering on. Before I fit the side decks, I need to make up a couple of laminated knees to fit into the rear corners of the cockpit, so the coaming will have nice rounded corners as it was when I first saw this boat. However, this will be in the next episode along with the fitting of the side decks and the gunnels. This episode number 12 has been a long time in the making, mostly due to pressures of my real job. I live in hope that more time can be spent on Jabiru in the future. See you next time.